In Philippians chapter 4 and verse 9, Paul makes a really bold statement. He says, "The things you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you." In other words, Paul is telling the church at Philippi, the people in that church, look, you know me, you've seen me, you've heard me, I've taught you. I want you to put into practice the things that you've observed, the things that you've heard, the things that you've learned. And I do think that's a pretty bold statement, because it meant that Paul was living a life that was worthy of following. And as I was thinking about what were some things that we could see in Paul's life that we might put into practice, one thing that struck me, and maybe because we've recently celebrated Thanksgiving, and so that's on my mind, and that was the way that Paul expressed gratitude. In almost every one of his letters, in the very beginning words of the letter, Paul writes about his thankfulness for the people to whom he is writing. For example, in the book of Philippians, he says, "I thank my God in all my remembrance of you, always offering prayer with joy in my every prayer for you all, in view of your participation in the gospel from the first day until now." And those similar thoughts are repeated in almost all of his letters. Even in 1 Corinthians, the letter that we're going through in church, where Paul had to say a lot of hard things to the church, he starts out in the first chapter by thanking God for them. And so I thought one easy way that we could look at Paul's example and follow it and take an action step would be to say thank you to someone. Not just a nebulous thank you to God for the people around us, but to specifically thank him for a particular person, and then to take that a step further and take time to write a note and send it to that person. To write a note and say those words, "I thank God for you because." And I believe that if we did that it would be a tremendous encouragement to the person who received that note. You know, often we go about our lives unsure of whether we are having an impact on the world around us. And most of the things that have an impact are probably the little things. The time that we did something that we didn't even consider to be that great, but it blessed somebody else. And think how we would be affirmed in those actions if we heard from that person that we blessed and they said, "Thank you for that." So rather than thinking about how other people can bless us, let's think today about how we can be a blessing to someone else. And as you're watching this video, when you finish watching this video, grab pen and paper and write a note. I'll even say you could email, but let's not text. Let's make it a little more permanent. And send a note to somebody who has blessed you, and say, "I'm thankful to God for you, and I want you to know it." That's what Paul did in his letters. He didn't just thank God for the people. He let them know that he was thanking God for them and the particular reasons why. He calls us to follow his example. This is one easy way we could take an action step today.